All right. Hey, welcome everybody. It's Rob here from Bestseller Publishing. Excited to be with you today. I'm back from a cruise with my wife and a couple of buddies and had such a great time visiting some old haunts in Miami and then going away to the Caribbean. So I am relaxed and rested. And as I often do when I go away, I like to bring a couple of books. I like to do a lot of reading. I like to do thinking and that sort of thing. That's always something you can do on a cruise besides eating and drinking, which I don't do near as much of those two things as I used to, which is probably very, very good. Anyway, so I want to share some things with you today. You probably saw, what today is. Today is how to develop your inner scorecard. What that is, and how to have the inner motivation and an inner scorecard that really helps you to reach your goals. That is the ugly and somewhat accurate example of what we're going to be talking about today. Okay, so as always, if there's any things that you have questions on, please type them in the chat box, and I will gladly answer them. If I see them, I'll try to answer them right away. If I do not see them, then I will make sure to answer them towards the end when I finish the training. Okay, so inner scorecard. So what is an inner scorecard or an inner scoreboard? If you look it up, you'll see it was probably the idea, the term was probably made a little bit famous by Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett discussed how he became one of the most, if not the most successful investor of his generation. And he talked about, an outer scoreboard versus an inner scoreboard or scorecard. And what he said was that when it comes to real success, for him, real success is not defined by what is happening on the outside, because that is something that is fickle. Fame, the amount of money, status, those types of things. And there's certainly a time to have goals in your life that may include some of those outer scorecard things. And in fact, I, every single year, set goals that do include some of those things. However, what he said was the thing that drove him the most was having his own inner scorecard that even once he got to a certain level of fame, success, money, that the outer world thought was extravagant, incredible, right? It kept driving him to serve more people, help more people, etc. Nick Saban, who many might consider the greatest college football coach ever. He's still coaching, and he's won, I think, 7 national championships. He's the head football coach for the University of Alabama. Roll Tide, if you're a Alabama fan. I am not, but I do love Nick Saban, and I do respect what he does. He calls it an inner scoreboard, obviously more relatable to his profession. Same exact thing. He shares that the outer is fickle. The outer changes. If you want to make lasting changes in your life, if you want to have lasting success, then you are going to create an inner scoreboard or an inner scorecard. Okay. So I want to talk to you a little bit today about what that, I want to at least define it. And so that's my definition of it. The outer being things that are important and things that can drive us a little, but the outer being things that are fickle and often based on what other people think. Money, status, fame, etc. Again, a level of that is important, especially depending upon where you're starting from. But the reality is those things are not lasting, and those things are fickle, and those things will not take you to the level that you could potentially go in your business, in your life, and serving the number of people that you potentially can and maybe even should serve. So I want to talk to you about how to develop your own inner scorecard or inner scoreboard. And I'm going to move the camera over here because I'm going to share my screen, and we're going to first start in the whiteboard. And then we'll go from the whiteboard to me showing you some of the stuff that I'm doing and working on for myself as well. So I'm going to show you some of my inner scoreboard stuff. Okay. So I should have done my standing desk, but I did not. So let me see if I can reach all of this. So this idea of the inner, and we'll call it scorecard, but it could be scoreboard, is all about measuring your success intrinsically. And to measure your success intrinsically, you need to have the items, you need to have your own scoreboard, intrinsic scoreboard set up within you so that you can determine how you're doing. The extrinsic, the outer scorecard is often other people's standards, other people's levels that you may have achieved or may not have achieved of, as I said, fame, money, success, etc. To develop this inner scorecard means that you have to have something intrinsic to you that you are looking at and you are measuring your success against. When you have these things set up, then your success becomes more about the process, and it's also in your control. So the idea of this inner scorecard is it's something that's intrinsic. It's something that is about the process, which I really love. It's process focused, and it is within your control, not just today, but forever. It's something that is not outside of you, but is within you. Okay. So we have to have some guidelines in place. Okay. That all sounds great, right? I want a process. I want my scorecard to be within my control, right? I want to have control over it. I'd love for it to be intrinsic. So what does that mean? How do we set it up so that it is intrinsic? Well, let's talk about that for a few minutes. And I'm going to show you a couple of different ideas. And then I'm going to actually dive into how I'm setting it up for myself. And I'll show you some of the kind of workings of that process itself. So for it to be intrinsic, we'll start over here. It needs to be more based on your values and your beliefs. Okay. Not other people's values, not other people's beliefs, what you value in your life and what you believe in your life. Now, may that change from time to time? Certainly, there may be some adjustments in your values from time to time, but nothing compared to what you value outside. What you value outside may change radically. I mean, you may have, when I was 17 years old, my dream car was to have a Corvette. I bought my first Corvette at 17. How did I do it? Well, I got a student loan. Back in those days, you could do with the student loan money anything that you wanted to do. So what did I do? Well, I needed transportation to get to college. So I used that money to buy a Corvette, right? So now I owned a Corvette. Well, guess what? It wasn't good enough to own a Corvette. I wanted a newer Corvette, right? My outer beliefs changed as I started to reach these levels of success. That would not change intrinsically, right? That is not a value, right? That's not a belief. That's something that is driven by an external. So we have to then take a good hard look at what our values are, core values, and what's really important to us, right? So how do we do that? Well, I probably like you, and maybe not near as good as you, I have an idea of what values are. I have an idea of what is valuable and important to me. But a lot of times, if you're not paying attention to this on a regular basis, you might not even know. It might be something that you just live every single day but don't pay a lot of careful attention to why it is that you do the things you do the way that you do them. Some things may be obvious and some things may not be obvious. So for me, and maybe for many of you, the first step for all of this was, let's start making a list of values, and let's see which of these list of values really resonate the most with me. So this is what I did. Now, what are we talking about? We're talking about you crafting and creating your inner scorecard, right? So it starts intrinsically with your list of values and beliefs. So rather than you just taking out a pen and paper or a whiteboard like this or whatever and making a list, these are the things that are important to me. These are the things that I believe. What I recommend doing is going to a site, and I'll share some of this stuff with you guys, going to a site that actually lists out like tons of different core values. And this is a site that that I'll put in the chat so that you guys can see. And there may be some better sites as well, but I'll put this in the chat for you guys. And this is a site that I came across, and it's just a list of values. And so I literally went through this list and I thought about every single one of these words. For the most part, I understood the definition of, at least what I believe the definition of these words. And I started writing down of these words, which ones resonated with me the most. Now, I don't believe, now look, in one sense, all of these are important things, right? Being a person that believes in abundance. I believe in abundance. Being a person that practices acceptance. I like to practice acceptance. Being a person that values accomplishment. I value accomplishment. Okay, so in other words, every single one of these are important. So, however, some will resonate more with you than others. And my firm belief is that if you have 100 values, you probably don't have any. So I would rather drive it down to the important 4 or 5 or 6 that you can then build around, build your scorecard around, so that you can judge for yourself. Now, you can adjust it, you can change it, you can remove a value, you can add a value in. I'm not saying that you can't. I'm just saying that if you have your list and it's too long, you're probably not going to adhere to it in the way that an intrinsic scorecard should be adhered to. Just my personal opinion. You take from that what you will. So what I did with this list is I went through them all, and I really looked at the ones that I felt like really resonated with me. And I took some time to do this. So I started making my own list. Boldness, consistency, determination, enthusiasm, excellence, generosity, gratitude, hard work, integrity, passion, perseverance, service, and toughness. Now, here's the interesting thing about my list. This is an extensive list. It's too many for me. However, what you'll see when you make your own list is that some of these are reasonably the same, right? Things like boldness, it's not the same as toughness, but there's an element of it, right? I had courage on this list. Well, boldness and courage were so much alike that I took courage off completely. I may decide which of these two, boldness or toughness, which of these two are more important to me. Well, guess what? Perseverance is similar to toughness as well. So I may say, you know what? Toughness is similar to perseverance and boldness. So I'm going to go ahead and remove that off the list completely. I left it on the list because I wanted you to at least see how I'm looking and how I'm managing my own list. My feeling is this should be no more than 4, 5, 6 in its entirety, so that I can have an intrinsic scorecard that I'm looking at and saying, am I living up to my standards of service or of hard work or of excellence, right? I don't want to have a list that is too long, that will be exhaustive for me on a regular basis to go back through and say, you know what? Am I bold? Am I consistent? Am I determined? Am I excellent? Am I generous? Am I grateful? 4 or 5 of these is going to be enough for me to live an outstanding life, right? And if at some point I decide to make that change and make that adjustment, I can do that. All right. So I'm just showing you part of my process. You determine how you want to do this, obviously, for yourself. So the first step in all of this is I want to take a look at what are my values and beliefs. I am going to make a list of my values and beliefs based on what really resonates with me. And then I am going to cull the list. I am going to try to remove as many as possible because I want to get down to no more than 5 or 6 things maximum. Okay. Look, this is my own style. Like some of this is what I was reading when I was away, but some of this is my own adaptation of all of this. So when I say 5 or 6, hey, 5 or 6 feels like a lot to me. You may say, you know what, Rob, you're kind of lazy. I think I can have 10 or 15 or 20 values. Hey, more power to you. Fantastic. For me, 5 or 6 seems exhaustive. It seems like that is enough for me. Okay. So this is kind of step number 1, if you will. And I kind of have it broken down. I probably should have, I got letters and numbers all over the place. So this is the first thing that we want to do is we want to look at it being intrinsic, which means we want to determine what our values, what your values and your beliefs are. Okay. All right. What's the next step? Let's say you've culled the list down. You have a number that you feel comfortable with. You're going to see where some of, if you've been a part of these various calls, you'll see how some of these things come together. So from there, I am creating a bucket, if you will. Okay. This is my bucket of values, right? This is my base layer of my scorecard. Okay. Well, what goes in that bucket? It's not a bucket of values in by itself, right? I have to measure those values against certain areas of my life, right? So the values by themselves are not what is important. It's how the values relate to all the areas of my life that are important to me. Okay. So it's how those values relate to that. So what are those things for me? Well, I have my 5 F's, right? And I'll draw 5 circles in here. I have my faith. I have my fitness. I have my family. I have my finances. And I have my friendships. These 5 areas of my life are like the essence of my life. When I set my goals every year, I'm setting my goals within these 5 areas of my life. Now, that's part of the issue with goal setting, right? Because goal setting becomes either something that is extrinsic or intrinsic. And so with this, we want these things to be focused on the intrinsic values that we think are most important. Now, because I have intrinsic values, I can measure them against the things in my life that are most important. And they all fall within these 5 areas: faith, fitness, family, finances, and friends, and in no particular order. Okay. So now I have my values. Now I have what I am measuring my values against. Where do we go from there? Well, we want to have a methodology or a process within, and by the way, many of these things can be kind of mapped out together, but we want this idea because it's not extrinsic. It's not something that like I am working towards owning a Corvette at 17 years old, right? And I now have reached that. Maybe that was a great goal at 17. I don't know. It certainly was fun. And here I am talking about it right now. Great. But that was 40 years ago, right? I've long passed those days. The values and the person that I want to be is internal. It's intrinsic, right? So how do I get to the place that I want to get in my fitness, finances, friends, family, and faith? Well, I need to be, when it comes to intrinsic motivation, I have to be process focused, because it's not about the end goal. It's these values are about process, because this is how I am living every single day. Okay. So what does process focused means? Well, it means several things. Number one, it means that I live in the present. We live our lives in the present. Number two, it means that the focus of my life is on a process, not on the end goal itself. I may follow my process in the exact way that I think my values align with the process, and the end goal, because of situations completely outside of me. Those situations could be the culture, it could be the environment, it could be what's going on with our economy and what's going on in business. It could be that I did everything right in the real estate market, but real estate collapsed 50%. And I still need to feel like I lived according to my values. And if I did, I can feel great about it, even if what happens on the outside is things are falling down or seemingly falling down. Because here's the cool thing. If I lived my process and I lived my values, then what will eventually happen will be successful. Number three, this means that we ignore the external forces, voices and forces, right? Because that might be the economy or the other things that I mentioned. It means that what I'm doing is I'm performing to my standard. Standard based on my values. And what all this allows me to do is forget the outcome. Here's the cool thing about this. If you perform to your standards, to your values, if you focus on the process, you live in the present, then the outcome is going to be successful. It may not be successful immediately, and it may not be successful right when you think it should be, but eventually it is going to be successful. And here's the thing, you're always going to be able to feel good about it because you have an internal standard. It's the reason that Nick Saban continues to win national championships. You know, there are many great coaches that have won one national championship, and then for whatever reason, and often it's because of something that happens internally with them, they never win. They never get close to that pinnacle again. Now, it wasn't just luck, because you don't win just based on luck. They were doing something right, and maybe some forces came together to enable that success. But if they don't have it together intrinsically in the inner scorecard, then they're never going to reach that pinnacle again. But some do over and over and over again because they are process focused more than they are being focused on what is external. So what do you need to do with all of this? What is all of this amount to? And what should you do with it? Well, you have to decide what you're going to do with it, but here are some steps for you that may be helpful. So what to do, or what to do next, perhaps. Number one, figure out what are your core values. And again, you know, I like 5 or 6. If you feel like you need more, that's fine. What are they for you? Use that process that I shared. Go through what really resonates with you. Decide what is your personal standard when it comes to your values. Here's what I mean by that. And there's no wrong answer. Maybe there is, but let's say there's no wrong answer. Here's what I'll say. If in one of these areas you feel like, you know what, I don't want to go any deeper, I don't want to do any more, I don't want to, good is good enough here for me. I don't need to maximize my potential in this area. If you feel that about a particular value or belief or area of goal in your life, then you know what? I'd say that is fine for you and where you're at right now. I would say that what you need to consider is what areas are important to you really maximizing, like really giving your best, really doing your all. In some areas, as you get older, you may say, you know what? I'm good is good enough. I'm happy where I'm at with this thing right now. And for whatever reason, that core value is not that important to you. It's not resonating with you right now. Then move it aside, right? If your personal standard is good enough and that's where you're at, great. But find some where you really want to maximize those and go as deep as you can. You have to ask yourself in all of this, what really, that's ugly, really is important to you right now. And in whatever thing you're focused on. And that thing, I put an X there. It could be your career, your fitness, your faith, anything. What really is important to you now in your career? What really is important to you now in your faith? What really is important to you now in your fitness? Because this will drive this important question, and that is, what are you keeping score in? You've probably heard when it comes to managing employees that we always inspect or should inspect what we expect, right? So we think of that maybe with management or with a team, but we have to think about that with ourselves. Maybe we're very good at that or not. I don't know. But if you understand that you need to inspect what you expect from yourself, then it kind of goes without saying that you need expectations for yourself. Whoops. You need to have expectations. So expectations are about, okay, what are you keeping score in your life? Like what's important to you? If you're not keeping score in anything, and again, we're not talking about external things, right? I'm not talking about getting a bigger house or boat or making more money. And those things are not unimportant. They are important, but that's not what I'm talking about. Because someone might say, well, that's materialistic and I don't want to keep score in that area. Great. But you should be keeping score in some areas in your life. And the areas you should be keeping score in are the areas of your values and your beliefs. So what are you inspecting, right? What are you expecting? That this is the idea of keeping score. And are you inspecting that? Are you looking at that? Have you developed a scorecard? And I'll go back to some of these values, right? If I'm looking at something that I'm doing in my faith, for example, then I have a scorecard on generosity, right? Am I determined and persevering? Am I working hard to be generous in my faith? I mean, if these are my values and faith is important to me, then I should be keeping score for myself. Now, we may not want to be judged by somebody else. Okay. But shouldn't we at least, judge ourselves in this area? What Warren Buffett would say, what Nick Saban would say, is that if you keep an inner scorecard, then you will maintain a standard of excellence in your life and success in your life that you would never imagine, because it will build on itself. It will go from one level of success to another in these areas. For me, It's fitness, finances, faith, family, friendships. And it's about the intrinsic, not the external. Anyway, that is what I have to share with you guys today. I hope that's helpful. This is stuff that I'm going through for myself. So I was hoping that it might be helpful for you as well. Obviously, you can relate that to lots of things like writing your book, like growing your business, etc.